In a couple of previous videos, I've been talking about the differences between like a heavier, more forward-weighted rapier and a lighter rapier. And Charles just got his new light Sam Signature Castile rapier in, so we figured we'd do some product placement and a little demo all in one. So I've got a heavier rapier. This one is really good at like binding and beating my opponent's blade around, but what I like it for is I can shoot through people's guards. That's why I made it this way. I really wanted to be able to like push through and thrust in opposition.
Yeah, so what the lighter rapier, or what really any light blade is much better at, is that you're not necessarily seeking the bind all the time. You're just trying to force your opponent, who does want to seek the bind, especially if they have a stronger or heavier blade, is that every time he goes to touch my sword, I move it out of the way. He goes to touch my sword, and I move out of the way, and I make my attack in that moment. And, you know, I stay strong, and I stay within the bind by gathering on my strong simultaneously during the attack. Whereas he's trying to seek the bind and bully my sword around, and if I let him have it, I have a really hard time of getting away. So his job is to push my sword around as much as he can, and my job is to keep my sword from being touched so that he can't push me around.
I know that I'm not going to be able to out-disengage and out-maneuver him, and what I'm really afraid is that he's going to thrust me, not in opposition, he's going to do a naked thrust somewhere like a wrist or in my chest, in a tempo, like, you know, between my tempos or faster than I can go. So I need to find times where he's in transition, where he's like going backwards so I can break through and hit. So I don't want to try and outspeed this sword because I'll lose, but I also can't think that I can just like out-strong it. Because anytime I try and take like a heavy taking action, he's just going to flee and move around. So I've got to like find him in between actions, make him go somewhere and follow it up.
That's true. It's a lot of times, you know, if you've ever competed or anything and your coach is being like, hey, you've got a heavier sword, just push him around. That's the same as telling somebody in BJJ when they're on the ground, just get up. Just get up. And you're like, man, I'm trying to get up. And at any point, it's, yeah, just push him around. It's like, well, he can't get me because I'm constantly dancing around all the time. And so what I'm trying to get him to do is dance with me, because I know that I can dance much faster and for much longer, because I won't gas my arm in like infinite disengages like he will.
I'd say like, if you were going to play against this really well, it would be trying to get me to like to overcommit on my takes, to try and keep up with yours. What would be a good way to counter that with this? To
be able to counter that, you have to be super resolute. So what you're going to want from me is, you know that everything that I do is going to be like almost always second intention, because you know I'm probably not actually going for the wrist, and I'm looking for, you know, something like that all the time. So if I see you going for that first one. You know that I'm probably not committed to the second action, so you need to just kind of pay attention to where I'm going to be. You know that as I'm coming across, you either catch me here or you wait and catch me here so that you can actually make the gather or something like that. What I want, because I know that if I just, you know, naked thrust in, he has the weight that he can just kind of casually move the sword out of the way. And unless I'm just so ahead of the tempo, there's no way I'm actually going to hit him on a first intention, unless I'm like intentionally trying to double him or something like that. So if I'm trying to hit safe, I have to move his blade out of the way, because I'm trying to make as little contact with it from this distance as possible. When I make contact with his blade, I want it to be at a point where it's here, where my strong is definitively on either the mid or the weak of his blade. And that usually happens as he extends here, like that. It usually happens simultaneously through the hit. And so unlike him, where he can just push and bully my sword around, I have to have a perfect tempo to have that same kind of bind.
This was a really big problem for me when I first got my version of that sword, because one of the things that I'm used to with these swords is being able to do my extension basically from my mid on their weak and thrusting in like this. But when I tried to do it with that, it just didn't do it. It couldn't press.
I push, I can muscle it, but I have to way overcommit to the action.
And in that point, like even this one
I just lose the action as I do that. So it's not that you can't disengage, it's not that you can't bind in opposition, you just have to change the way you're thinking about binding in opposition. I think one of my biggest peeves in fencing is people kind of think that, well, now that I have this sword, I have to fence in this way. That's not necessarily untrue. It's just that you have to kind of be aware that, okay, now that I have a lighter blade, any bind that I make has to be near perfect. It has to be with the edge. It has to be with the strong on the weak. I can't just, you know, fudge out having a stiffer blade and pushing them around with my weak just because I've got slightly better body mechanics than they do.
And this is kind of true across all swords. So we've talked about this, I've talked about this previously in a long sword. Like getting a shorter, thicker, long sword is going to change elements of how I fence, but it's not going to change the fundamentals of distance timing and like strong and weak. It's just going to change how I interact with those elements on like kind of a micro level.
Yeah, so I really do prefer a lighter sword, and most of the reason I prefer a lighter sword is because I like to fence for a long time, and I'm really out of shape, and I'm really old. I'm not. I'm 30 years old, but
I'm older than you. Shut up. I'm so
I'm
old.
really out of shape, and I like to be able to fence for a long time, and I can do that with a much lighter weapon. Sometimes you get an argument where people say, oh, well, we shouldn't give beginners lighter weapons because it teaches them bad habits. But in reality, beginners are just kind of a huge bag of bad habits, and there's not really, they can't really tell the difference between a lighter and a heavier sword in such a way that it's going to affect their fencing in any demonstrable way.
I would counter-argument that the people that I think that are the best started with modern Olympic fencing, which is the lightest weapons. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I don't think that a lighter weapon inherently. It's all about fundamentals. Like if you bring them in and you give them that and you say the best way to fight in rapier is to cut like this, then yeah, they're going to have bad habits.
Yeah, and a lot of that kind of comes with coaching. I think people are really quick to blame like the gear or the sword on why their students are turning out when really they ought to look inward and realize that it's actually their kind of piss poor coaching.
So what we're saying is that your sword matters, but it also doesn't matter.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't. It's going to be the same as anybody who's like super deep into a hobby. Let's say if you're really into painting or you're really into sewing. When I have to paint something at my house, I go to Harbor Freight and I buy the paintbrush that costs the least amount of money because I don't put any thought into that, but a painter is over here on some website that I don't even know exists, ordering brushes that cost more money than I could even fathom paintbrushes costing, and it matters to them.
It does matter to them, but then again, like at the same time, right? Like if you hand Rob Childs a piece of junk rapier, it's not going to make.
It's not going to make that big of a difference, but he's not going to like it.
No, he's not going to like it.
He has a right. He has a right to use the rapier that makes him 0.1% better than a piece of junk rapier, and that painter has
the right
chooses to spend hundreds of dollars on paintbrushes because of the 5% better that it makes than the Walmart watercolor brushes, right?
I'm sure that we had a point at the beginning of this, but I think we lost it. Either way,
spend money at Castile Armory. Give Sam Kovic all of your money. See this? Look at this one. Look, we have two of these.
This is also Castile, by the way.
There's even a bird. There's 4 birds in one picture right now.
Send me more rapiers, Sam.